Hello, and welcome back to J. Kernifer Astrology. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jenny, and I produce general predictive astrology videos for each new and full moon. Welcome to April 2025, the month of fire. In the month of April 2025, the temperature will get red hot, like fiery planet of war and aggression, Mars. You can anticipate chaos and disruption, and continued themes of fire and war. March featured two very potent eclipses, the consequences of which will continue to unfold over the next 6 months. We saw a lot of fires, more earthquakes, and more airplane crashes. South Carolina and North Carolina are still being ravaged by the Black Rock fire. We saw 6.4 and 7.7 magnitude earthquakes strike Myanmar, resulting in the loss of thousands of lives. We saw several earthquakes in the Tonga region and 2 in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. We saw an airplane crash outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you saw the footage for it, it appeared as though the plane dropped right out of the sky. And coinciding with the weekend of the new moon partial solar eclipse in Aries, the last of its kind for 8 years, we had a coronal mass ejection that thankfully was not Earth-facing. Otherwise, it could have been potentially devastating to our power grids. Neptune, the planet of collective subconscious ideals and cultural trends, will be taking its first steps and ingressing into fiery, Mars-ruled cardinal fire sign Aries for the first time since 1861 to 1875. This is while Mars, planet of action, passion, drive, and life force energy, one of the 2 great malefic planets that deliver karma, in the case of Mars, delivering karma through accident, injury, illness, and separation, comes out of his post-retrograde shadow, where he has been, and will be, retracing the steps of the last 6 months of its retrograde period. Beginning way back in September 2024, and over the past few weeks, Mars has been weakened or debilitated in cardinal water sign, Cancer, which relates to emotional regulation, domestic affairs, the home, the homeland, physical borders for safety and security, home security, national security, nationalism, and personal energetic boundaries. Mars is not comfortable in the deeply emotionally sensitive sign of the crab that tends to hold on to things for far longer than is healthy or necessary, which is why we've seen difficult, heavy emotions projected throughout the collective, especially by people who perceive threats to their personal sense of security and to the security of their homeland. Watch for heightened emotional sensitivity and corresponding reactivity. Collectively, we may all be feeling more easily triggered. Mars first ingressed into Cancer way back in September 2024 and entered his pre-retrograde shadow in October of 2024. This happened the moment he reached 17 degrees of Cancer, near fixed star Wasat, 18 degrees Cancer. Fixed star Wasat, which you may remember from previous episodes, is associated with poison, fire, danger, gas, and violence. During his 6-month retrograde period, Mars opposed Pluto 3 times, the first of which coincided with the 2024 United States presidential election. This was while Pluto was 29 degrees of Capricorn and Mars was 29 degrees of Cancer. Those were in the final days of Pluto, 29 degrees Capricorn, in our lifetimes. So it was a big deal. The second opposition happened in January 2025, with Mars in the early degrees of Leo, opposing Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius. And we have the third, final opposition coming up in April. More on that if you stay with me until the end of the video. Back in November 2024, Mars first ingressed into fiery fixed fire sign, Leo, bringing themes of wildfire. And in December, Mars stationed retrograde, 6 degrees Leo. Mars traveling along the Cancer-Leo cusp coincided with the Los Angeles wildfires. On April 7th, 2025, March will be back in bounds. And later on in April, Mars will travel over that Cancer-Leo cusp and return to Leo, still post-retrograde shadow, until May. In mid-April, both Mercury and Venus will station direct. This means that all planets will be direct until May 4th, when Pluto stations retrograde for 6 months. May the 4th be with you. Also in mid-April, we'll see a full moon that triggers great malefic planet Mars by cardinal T-square, also activating Chiron, asteroid of deep soul wounding that we carry with us subconsciously and often plays out interpersonally in our relationships, by direct conjunction to the full moon. This full moon will also feature the third and final pass of Mars opposing Pluto. The time between the end of March new moon partial solar eclipse and the mid-month full pink moon in Libra in the middle of April will highlight events that may seem as though the world is falling apart and into further chaos. 2025 is the year of chaos, after all. Libra is the sign of the scales, the only sign in the zodiac that's represented by an object, the scales of balance. In April 2025, there may be a global event that triggers conflict and violence across the collective. Fire is an element that burns away the old to make way for the new. It symbolizes our spiritual evolution. Think of the mythological phoenix being reborn from its ashes, stronger and more resilient than before. Fire is scary, but don't be scared. Be prepared. This is necessary, as the old way of doing things under a very corrupt form of capitalism that has led to a Machiavellian society that profits the wealthy top 2% at the expense of the collective, falls away in favor of a new world order. This new world order will eventually resemble one in which the power and wealth is more evenly distributed among the people. This is what Pluto in Aquarius from 2023 to 2043 and 2044 will bring Pluto is a slow-moving planet, so these changes will unfold slowly over the next 20 years. Hello, and welcome back to another general predictive astrology video here on J. Kernifer Astrology. I'm your host, Western tropical astrologer, Jenny Kern. I'd like you to take a moment to like this video, hit that subscribe button, it is free to subscribe, and ensure that that notification bell icon is selected to all. That way, you can be the first to know when we put out new content and see what the cosmos may have in store for you. As with most channels on YouTube, 70% of viewers are not currently subscribed, and it costs you nothing but a moment of your time to hit that subscribe button. It is one easy, zero-cost way to reward content creators for all of the hard work that goes into filming, editing, and producing videos. Liking the video tells the YouTube algorithm that you would like to see more of this content, and it helps push it out to other viewers who may benefit. Sharing the video and commenting on it is another way to tell the YouTube algorithm that you are enjoying the content and helps boost it so that others can see the videos. I would also like to invite you to share in the comments section where in the world you're tuning in from, anything that resonates in the content that I share, any questions you may have, share your natal placements, and let's start a conversation. Let's make this channel one of cosmic collaboration. I also love feedback. And now, without further ado, let's dive into the April astrology. I'd like to begin by reviewing the recent astrological history. Eclipse season 2025 kicked off with 2 eclipses in March. The first was a full moon total lunar eclipse featuring the South Node in Virgo on March 13th and 14th, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from, just before the Ides of March. Remember what the soothsayer warned Julius Caesar? Beware the Ides of March. This mid-March full moon total lunar eclipse heavily featured the Sun in conjunction to Saturn, planet of karma, time, restrictions, structure, and personal accountability. This featured the Sun sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune, planet of collective subconscious, in the late degrees of Pisces. This was in the days immediately following Saturn's Kazemi, or rebirth. Remember that Kazemi translates from Arabic, from through the heart of. From our Earth-based perspective, when a planet aligns with the Sun, it appears as though it is being consumed by the Sun's energy, to reemerge, sometimes a couple days later, like that phoenix rising from its ashes, new and reborn. Kazemi, therefore, means rebirth. So this was in the days following Saturn's Kazemi, 21 and 22 degrees of Pisces. That K-I-L-L or B, K-I-L-L-E-D degree, 22 degrees. Although we have a Saturn Kazemi annually, this one is special because it is the final Saturn Kazemi while Saturn is in Pisces. By Pisces season 2026, Saturn will be making forward progress in the early degrees of Aries. We have a parade of planets in the late degrees of Pisces on the cusp of Aries, amplifying Piscean themes of universal flow, oneness, and spirituality. And Saturn in Pisces from 2023 to 2025 has been all about establishing boundaries or structures within Piscean realms. Waterways, especially the oceans and the seas, making our dreams a reality through consistent daily effort over time. Those are boundaries, energetic boundaries, small commitments we make to the self. Migration, immigration, drugs, pharmaceuticals, any chemical substance, the immune system, toxins, intoxication, anything used to escape reality, patterns of escapism and avoidance, and trade have all become major themes since Saturn first ingressed into the mutable water sign of the Fishes on March 7th, 2023. Which I remember vividly because it coincided with the birth of this channel, a creative project that recently celebrated its 2nd birthday and catapulted me into a career as a healer. The Trump tariffs came into full force in March 2025, coinciding with Venus and Mercury retrograde, featuring 25% tariffs on imports from the US's direct neighbors, Mexico and Canada, 10% tariffs on all imports from China, and 25% tariffs on all aluminum and steel imports, as the US desperately tries to move manufacturing back within United States borders, instead of outsourcing those jobs to other countries. Pisces is all about flow and waterways, while Virgo is about the more minute details, and about trade. So this full moon total lunar eclipse in Pisces, conjoined with Saturn, essentially delivered new structures and limitations regarding global trade. In the fallout after Pluto left Capricorn for the early degrees of Aquarius, collectively, we are all shifting from a dominance of planets in earth and water, much slower moving elements, to planets in air and fire signs, much faster, more dynamic elements. The overall movement and trade of goods is down, while the information highway, the spread of information online, is at an all-time high. This is thanks to Jupiter in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, and soon to be Uranus in Gemini on July 7th, 2025. The second eclipse in March 2025 was at the end of the month, the new moon partial solar eclipse in Aries. As the final North Node solar eclipse in Aries for 8 years, it brings an increased probability of protests and labor strikes globally. We've already seen several examples of this. At the time of recording this video, on April 6th, 2025, there are protests outside of the White House and across many American cities. We also witnessed strikes in Morocco, mass transit strikes across the state of California, and nationwide airport strikes in Germany. The head of the United Auto Workers Union announced support of Trump's tariffs. Knowing that once the chaos clears, sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, this will ultimately bring a boom to the American auto industry, as these manufacturing jobs are brought within United States borders. As US leaders hold Europe accountable for providing their own defense and arms, Germany is rearming big time for the first time since World War II. Now, it's only 2025, but we're not far away from 2030. And 2030 is a year targeted by the World Economic Forum, WEF, and the United Nations, the UN, as the year for the manifestation of their plan to centralize global agendas. And this could be very well due to the long-term square between Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces that we've seen in parts of 2024 and in parts of 2025. The seeds for this were planted way back in December 2020 with the Great Conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto in the late degrees of Capricorn. In 2044, when we look back on the previous 20 years, this will prove to be a great reset. This 20-year Saturn-Jupiter cycle that was seeded in Saturn-ruled Capricorn, which is all about restrictions, limitation, karma, structure, accountability, and time, will feature attempts to use technology, Pluto and Aquarius, to centralize and control government, possibly at the hands of international world powers. We saw an example of this in 2020 and 2021 with the global pandemic, when mass fear caused the collective to hand over many of their personal rights and civil liberties. We were forced to comply with various rules and regulations, such as maintaining 6 feet of distance when in public spaces, having your temperature monitored before and entering the workplace. Now, I have an older car and the AC is not super functional, not a big concern because it's convertible, but on the days when I'm traveling on the highway and don't feel like having my window blown out right before a work day, we had a lot of heat waves. And this was in 2020 as I was preparing to go into the workplace. My temperature read, because I was stuck in a confined hot car during a heat wave with black interior, it was registering as though I had a fever, and I had to wait 15 to 20 minutes for that temperature to read accurately, for my body temperature to go back down. Now, I wasn't sick or contagious with anything, but at this time we had so much mass fear that we didn't want to take any risks, and we were willing to comply with rules and regulations that under normal circumstances we would never adhere to. This also includes being required to wear masks, face masks, in public spaces. We have an ongoing conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in the late degrees of Pisces and the early degrees of Aquarius as the two planets travel together from 2025 and 2026. This will serve as a return to the late 1600s and early 1700s, when Saturn and Neptune were last together in the early degrees of Aries. This was in 1701 and 1702 to be exact. Neptune relates to universalism and collectivism, the merging into oneness with all of humanity, while Saturn speaks to boundaries, structures, rules, and restrictions. Therefore, this long-term conjunction between Saturn and Neptune on the cusp of Pisces and Aries could result in the establishment of collectivist systems with universalist agendas. We already see a major push to eliminate cash, and this is in favor of a more digitalized currency. A more digitalized currency is much easier for the government to control. But fear not, because for any desperate attempts at power grabs, they will be exactly that, desperate attempts. I don't believe the collective will follow them as blindly this second time around. We are entering more enlightened times, and this is as people awaken to the pitfalls of a corrupt capitalist, highly Machiavellian society. Those who have profited from said society, those in the wealthy top 2%, may desperately want to cling on to whatever control they think they have. We've seen a huge wave of nationalism, and this divide came to an all-time head in the months leading into the November 2024 United States presidential election. Jupiter in Gemini has been expanding the dichotomy, or the polarities, in all things. There are two sides to every coin, and that is something that Gemini, the sign of the twins, serves to illuminate. That, coupled with Pluto and Aquarius, has the information highway and social media flooded with information for us to discern and sift through what's real and what isn't, especially as automation, artificial intelligence creates content that may not be real. Mass fear-mongering and an overall sense of purposelessness can make people more prone to following propaganda blindly and accepting illusionary narratives. I urge you to be cautious of anything that seeks to keep you angry, divided, or separated. You cannot evolve spiritually from a lower vibrational frequency of anger. When we are divided and angry, we are much easier to control and manipulate. Just think to George Orwell's literary classic, 1984. If you haven't read it, I suggest that you put it at the top of your list. It's a great American classic dystopian novel originally published on June 8th, 1949, during Gemini season. And this was long before the advent of smart devices that continually record and track data and feed it to global corporations. It serves as a cautionary tale about what can happen when we dare to stand up against tyrannical control, the tyrannical control of Big Brother, who is always watching and listening. Pluto in Aquarius will amplify many things, but especially disruptions that lead to transformation in the areas of aviation, all networks of transportation, including trains and automobiles, the information highway, currency, the digitalization of currency, and artificial intelligence. We may also see more talk about conspiracy theories, UFOs, and aliens, just to name a few examples. Aquarius also relates to the human brain and the central nervous system, another important network. Humanity playing God and later having their creations or inventions come back to bite them and possibly destroy them have long been the theme of many a sci-fi novel and film, and this reality may be upon us in the next 20 years. The idea of using fear-mongering, keeping people angry or divided, can be directly tied to Neptune, the planet of illusion and delusion. From 2011 to 2025, Neptune was very strong, empowered in its sign of modern rulership, Pisces. This coincided with the woke movement, widespread DEI, diversity and inclusion initiatives, and the global pandemic. We also may look back on these years and witness record floods and historic flooding events, especially in the years that overlap with Uranus and Taurus. With Neptune ingressing into Aries, beginning on March 30th, 2025, we run the risk of individual ideals of zealism, delusions of grandeur, taking center stage, with war and national security being used as tools or a means for generating mass fear among the collective. As we look back through history, we can find that war has been incredibly profitable for American companies that manufacture arms and munitions. World War II brought the golden years of Hollywood, and United States-based manufacturing boomed, helping lift the United States out of the Great Depression. When Neptune was last in Aries from 1861 to 1875, it coincided with the American Civil War. This time period featured not only Neptune in Aries, but also Uranus in Gemini. Whenever Uranus transits the sign of the twins, Gemini, it coincides with U.S. involvement in a major war. Uranus will dip its toes into Gemini on July 7th, 2025. And now, without further ado, let's get into the details of the astrology of April 2025. April 2025 features two lunations, a full pink moon in Libra in the middle of the month, and a new moon in Taurus at the end of the month. Both Libra and Taurus are Venus-ruled signs, and we begin the month with a Venus and Mercury retrograde. The two are fused together in conjunction, and their retrogrades, their symbolism, are therefore also fused together. Venus stations direct, exalted in the late degrees of Pisces, 24 degrees 37 arc minutes of Pisces to be exact, under the mid-April full pink moon, 23 degrees Libra, featuring fixed stars Spica and Arcturus. Venus will be in post-retrograde shadow until May 16th, 10 degrees 50 arc minutes Aries. So Venus retrograde will be influencing most of Taurus season. You can jot these dates down on your calendar. April 12th or very early on April 13th, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from, we have the full pink moon in Libra, 23 degrees Libra. And on April 27th, 2025, we have the new moon, 7 degrees Taurus. Venus and Mercury will both be retrograde until about the middle of the month, with Venus stationing direct under that full pink moon in Libra. This means that the disruptions we've seen to Venusian life areas, to our peace, our stability, our finances, the work that we do to earn money, how we invest our time, energy, and money, our relationships, and our overall values, and the disruptions we've seen to Mercury-ruled areas, to trade, commerce, travel, and communication, will begin to clear away. Mercury is debilitated in Pisces, and especially when it's in conjunction to a parade of planets in Pisces. This makes things more cloudy and confusing, since Mercury rules are logical, the lower functions of the mind. On the positive side, Mercury in Pisces is highly artistic. It's intuitive, imaginative, and creative. Once Mercury returns to Aries, the communication style is much more direct, assertive, blunt, and at times, domineering, or even aggressive. Venus is considered debilitated in cardinal fire sign Aries, but exalted in mutable water sign Pisces, with Venus retrograde exposing the cracks in our closest relationships, whether those are romantic relationships, client relationships, friendships, or partnerships. This gives us an opportunity to work through problems and grow stronger together, or an opportunity to get away from the relationship in favor of more overall peace, balance, and stability, so you can get back to focusing on your own personal needs. Although the month begins with both Mercury and Venus retrograde, by the middle of the month, full pink moon in Libra, all of the planets will be direct. And this is until May 4th, when Pluto stations retrograde. When the planets are traveling direct, we tend to see more forward movement and progress, so you can expect things to get much more fast-paced. Buckle up and prepare for a fast-paced, chaotic month of fire in April 2025. This will be further amplified by Mars gaining speed with each upcoming week, as it eventually comes back into bounds April 7th, 2025, coinciding with Mercury stationing direct, and leaves its post-retrograde shadow for good in May 2025. The first half of April is characterized by that parade of planets we keep talking about, or stellium of planets in Pisces. Venus, Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, now in the early degrees of Aries, and the north node of fate and destiny. They're in close conjunction for the first half of April, essentially fusing their energy all together and creating an emphasis of energy along the Pisces-Aries cusp. Venus is considered the most empowered and powerful planet in this configuration, and this is due to her exaltation in the late degrees of Pisces. This means that she's calling the shots and influencing all of the other planets, not only in Venus-ruled signs, Taurus and Libra, but all of the planets in that parade of planets, or stellium. With the north node of collective fate and destiny in Pisces for the next year and a half until mid-July 2026, this will amplify Piscean themes for all of us to work on in the collective. These Piscean themes include oneness, universal flow, spirituality, the importance of energetic boundaries, intoxication, escapism, avoidance, migration, immigration, chemicals, the human immune system, poison, water, the oceans, the seas. Just a few examples. On the same day that Venus stations direct, we see a full pink moon in Libra in a Venus-ruled sign. Libra, 23 degrees Libra. This features the moon in direct conjunction to two fixed stars, Spica and Arcturus. Late on Saturday, April 12th, or very early in the morning on Sunday, April 13th, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from, we'll see this full moon, 23 degrees Libra, which serves as a moment of climax, revelation, or ending, a key turning point, activating the me versus we relationship axis, Libra versus Aries. If you're on the east coast of the United States like I am, the full moon exacts at 8:21 p.m. on Saturday, April 12th. This is occurring at 12:21 a.m. Universal Time. Please be sure to adjust for your unique time and location on the planet. Unhealthy, codependent, possibly even toxic relationships, relationship dynamics, and patterns are highlighted under this full moon in Libra. They are revealed so that they can be cleared away, ultimately freeing us up for more personal priorities. Full moons occur when the sun is opposite the moon, meaning that the sun is in the final 10 degrees of Aries, 23 degrees Aries, and the moon is in the final 10 degrees of Libra, 23 degrees Libra. This is the high point of a lunar cycle, showing when something is either ending or coming to an energetic climax. Happening along the me versus we relationship axis, Aries versus Libra, this can show a relationship breaking up or falling apart. This can be between people, friends, clients, or coworkers. And this is especially with unhealthy dynamics that have become toxic. We may be feeling as though the person, situation, or environment in question has become, in some way, toxic or unhealthy for us and is no longer aligned with our soul's full potential. As many of you already know, I am a North Node Aquarius with Pluto right on top of my natal North Node of fate and destiny. What this means, among many things, is not only an interest and a gift in translating the astrology for all of you, is that many of these things happened for me personally several weeks before they happen for the rest of the collective. So I've already had my big full pink moon in Libra falling out. And this is between one of my most regular tarot clients who came to me for tarot and other advice on a bi-weekly, so every other week, sometimes weekly, for 2 years. Now, since the beginning, I had tried to establish healthy energetic boundaries, and this individual, who doesn't seem to understand or respect boundaries very well, continued to push the limits. They wanted to force a friendship, although they were 7 years younger than me. And they're a nice person, so I would have considered a friendship, whatever a friendship can mean between someone who pays you as a client, if they had proved more capable of respecting my boundaries. But time and time again, they would blow up my phone, although I had made it very clear that I do not like texting, and that the friendships that I do have, we don't text each other all the time. We don't text each other even that often. We might talk on the phone for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes longer, but then we might not speak for several months, and both parties like it this way. My friendships tend to be all over the world, with the safety of distance between us, and we tend to have a mutual understanding and a mutual independence, no codependency. I found this individual, this tarot client, to consistently push the boundaries, wanting advice multiple times a week, often very late at night, although they knew that I get up very early in the morning, essentially feeling entitled to my precious time and energy without paying for my services, and oftentimes putting me in a position where I was providing free therapy. Now, I studied psychology. I have a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's of science in elementary education, but I am not a licensed therapist. This is not appropriate. Please do not put your friends or your tarot readers or your astrologers in the position where they feel pressured to provide you with free therapy. Please be respectful of their time and energy and avoid slurping it all up selfishly. Now, for months, I was meditating on this and struggling to end the client-business owner relationship. And this is because they were a consistent client and very supportive of the work that I do. But in the end, the cost of doing business with them began to far outweigh the benefits. And one night, they asked me for advice. They didn't like what I had to say, which resulted in them exploding at me. And that made it very easy to walk away from the relationship altogether. The planetary ruler for the full pink moon in Libra, stationing direct under the full moon, indicates that what we've been reconsidering when it comes to love, money, work, finances, our overall values, while Venus was retrograde, can now be acted on. Whenever a planet stations direct or retrograde, its symbolism is amplified. Venus relates to the rhythms of life and our overall sense of peace, balance, and stability. This can be within the home and our finances, Taurian realms, or it can be interpersonally with relationship harmony, a Libra realm. Although Venus will be in her post-retrograde shadow until May, great clarity will come through in the days leading up to the full pink moon in Libra in the middle of the month, in the middle of April. Venus is further amplified, being the most heavily aspected planet in the chart of the full moon, further adding to her power and influence. Venus is conjunct Saturn, planet of karma, authority, personal accountability, restriction, and limitation, and the North Node of collective fate and destiny, showing that whatever action we're taking, it's responsible, it's mature, and it has the potential for long-term results. There will also be some sort of a fated or meant to be, destined feeling to it. An exalted Venus in Pisces, conjoined with Mercury, Saturn, the North Node of fate and destiny, and Neptune, now 0 degrees Aries, is all about unconditional love. And we'll get into this a little bit deeper when we discuss the fixed stars involved, most notably Spica and Arcturus, near 23 degrees of Libra, opposite the sun, on the belly of the sea monster, or whale, the Kraken, and the myth of Andromeda, Perseus, Medusa, and the Kraken. Familiar if you've ever seen The Clash of the Titans. Libra and Pisces are two highly creative signs, and they are two signs that tend to struggle with energetic boundaries, along with cardinal water sign Cancer, where Mars is coming out of post-retrograde shadow. Libra is an other-focused cardinal or initiating air sign that's all about initiating interpersonally with its charm, charisma, and often beauty. It's a blending or a chameleon energy, similar to Gemini. As a Libra with a Libra stellium, rising with my ascendant, I often say that Libra is able to intuitively sense whatever the group needs and fill that void, whether that is as a leader or a member of the team, ultimately creating greater harmony throughout the group. Pisces, as a mutable water sign, wants to merge and blend, and therefore energetic boundaries can be foreign to Pisces. Both signs, Libra and Pisces, and even Cancer, risk losing themselves, their sense of identity, in connection with others. They're also highly vulnerable due to their high amounts of empathy and understanding and compassion. They're highly vulnerable to being taken advantage of by others who seek to gain from their energy. It may seem obvious to some of you watching, but for many in the collective, unconditional love is not obvious, as it was not modeled to them. Unconditional love means loving without condition. This is what I hope to have modeled for my karmic twin flame. I loved him and accepted him, despite his many flaws, as much as he tried to hide and run away from them. So Libra, and this full moon in Libra, is a cardinal or initiating air sign that is all about creating interpersonal balance and harmony between the needs of others and the self, while Aries is a cardinal fire sign that is all about independence, authentic self-expression, and self-sufficiency. The full moon exacts 23 degrees, which is an Aquarius degree. This is related to our individual role as one small part or member of a greater collective or society. We have a Yod, a finger of God formation, pointing to the full moon conjunct Spica and Arcturus. The Yod is an isosceles triangle with planetary bodies at the base forming harmonious, supportive sextiles, 60-degree angles to one another. This full moon, 23 degrees Libra, involved in this Yod formation, forms inconjuncts, or 150 degrees, almost direct oppositions, showing issues in relating to the energy to the base of this triangle. The base of the triangle is formed between that multi-planet conjunction, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, the North Node of Fate and Destiny, and Neptune, on the cusp of Pisces and Aries, and Uranus on fixed star Algol, the demon Gorgon Medusa's head. Algol is known as the demon star, and Uranus will be conjunct Algol for the entire month of April and for the next couple months. Major fated changes are unfolding, ultimately supporting our surrender to a higher power, to divine timing. Allow these toxic and unhealthy relationship patterns to fall away so that they can create greater space for your personal priorities and for more balanced connections to come in the future. This full moon, featuring the moon in Libra, conjunct Spica and Arcturus, is opposite the sun in Aries, in direct conjunction to Chiron, asteroid of deep soul wounding stemming from early childhood that we carry un- or subconsciously within us and plays out interpersonally, conjunct the sun, creating a spotlight of energy, serving as a flashlight, shining it on our deepest wounds. In Aries, Chiron in Aries usually relates to perceived abandonment and rejection wounding, wounds to our independence and our self-sufficiency, with the moon in Libra highlighting patterns of codependency. This is happening while the full moon forms a cardinal T-square formation, a 90-degree angle to ruling planet for the sun in Aries, Mars, weakened and debilitated in Cancer. A highly emotionally reactive and easily triggered Mars in Cancer at that. This means that a weakened, highly emotional, and easily triggered Mars in Cancer forms internal pressure that comes out in an exploding way. You can think of Mars in cardinal water sign Cancer as fire and water mixing together, which create steam. If you have a lid on that pot and the steam builds, eventually that lid explodes like a volcano. So this might be happening for you interpersonally, as this tarot client exploded at me. This tarot client is a Cancer sun. Mars in Cancer relates to nationalism, national security, the homeland, home life, domestic affairs, danger in the waterways, and home security. So these will all continue to be major themes. Chiron is considered the wounded healer, so we're reminded that we all carry psychological wounds within us from our previous experiences. Once healed, once brought into the light of consciousness, that pain, that trauma can be transmuted into personal power, positioning one to become a healer of others, as was my path. You can look to your natal Chiron placement for more information. Look for the character resembling a key. Look for the sign, the exact degree, the house it falls into, along with aspects to other planetary bodies and asteroids for more information into your own personal wounding. And if you need any help with that, you know to check the description box. Send me an email, and I'll get back to you with my availability and pricing to help you navigate this. Chiron is where my astrology journey started. I had attracted a series of narcissistic lovers, narcissistic lover after narcissistic lover, and was so heartbroken and at a loss for words as to how I consider myself to be pretty loving and kind, could attract such dark energy. And what I realized is that I am the only, as are you, common denominator in all of my relationships and all of my problems. I had to take a long, hard look in the mirror at how I was showing up energetically in these relationships. In the past, I didn't know what unconditional love was, and that was because unconditional love was not modeled to me. I was raised by somebody high on the narcissistic spectrum, and it's no wonder that I ended up attracting mates, lovers, friends, even people in the workplace who mirror the energy of that person who raised me. And this was meant to awaken me to these patterns so that I could shift out of codependency and into personal power, which is why I am able to guide you. My Chiron is in Cancer, in a very public part of my chart. It's in the 10th house, on my midheaven, the 10th house representing our public reputation and our career. Is it any wonder that I reference my background here on this channel and that I use it in the work that I do every day as a healer of others? Chiron in Cancer is a mother wound, often relating to a mother presenting high on the narcissistic side of the spectrum within that dark tetrad. Under this full pink moon in Libra, on April 12th or 13th, the sun is in direct conjunction to Chiron, putting the spotlight of energy onto it for all of the collective. So watch for your deepest wounds getting triggered. Remember, awareness leads to control. Don't be scared, be prepared. Chiron, much like Mars, is considered to be malefic and can symbolize literal wounding. Chiron in the Mars-ruled sign of Aries, with Mars in Cancer influencing it, an event triggers some sort of rejection or abandonment wound, playing out within our closest interpersonal relationships. But remember not to take it personally. This could include literal wounding to the parts of the body ruled by Aries, to the face, to the head, to the blood, circulatory system, or even to the heart. There could be a literal wounding to a major solar figure or leader, such as an assassination attempt, or the DEATH of a father figure, boss, or authority figure. This can also be tied back to Uranus 26 degrees Taurus. The month of April and the upcoming months could be particularly dangerous for United States President Donald Trump. And this is because he has his midheaven exactly on demon star Algol, forming an exact square to Mars rising with his ascendant, 26 degrees Leo. Last year, I produced a series of videos in the beginning of July for the new moon in Cancer 2024, predicting the multiple assassination attempts against then presidential candidate Donald Trump. I will link these videos as an in card and in the description box below for you to go back and review. I highly encourage you to do so. I cover in great detail fixed star Algol, where Uranus will be conjunct for the next couple months, leading into its ingress into Gemini, and the mythology behind it, which ties back to the great damsel in distress Andromeda, the unconditional love between her and the great hero Perseus, the flying magical winged horse Pegasus, the Kraken, the sea monster sent by Poseidon to destroy Andromeda, and the Gorgon Medusa, who was once a beautiful maiden turned into a monster with a head of snakes and a stare that turns men to stone when they make eye contact with her. These myths represent not only unconditional love, but the triumph of good over evil, which happens when we are able to transcend superficial, material longings of the ego. Uranus on Algol historically coincides with violence on the world stage. This mid-April full pink moon in Libra is connected not only to a new moon that occurred 6 months ago, but to the new moon in Libra the year prior to that, and to a half moon, a first quarter moon, 22 degrees of Libra, that occurred on July 13th, featuring the sun 22 degrees Cancer, squaring the moon, the first quarter moon, 22 degrees Libra, that K-I-L-L or B, K-I-L-L-E-D degree. July 13th, 2024 is the exact date of the first assassination attempt against then presidential candidate Donald Trump. The new moon solar eclipse that this full moon also ties back to, that occurred in 2023, was on October 15th, 2023, 21 degrees Libra, right in that same territory of the full moon, 23 degrees Libra, April 12th and 13th, 2025. So this full moon completes the seeds of intention that were planted 6 months ago under the new moon solar eclipse 10 degrees Libra on October 2nd, 2024, and the new moon solar eclipse on October 15th, 2023, 21 degrees Libra, along with the first quarter moon on July 13th, 2024, coinciding with that first assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Therefore, events that occurred on or around October 15th, 2023, July 13th, 2024, and October 2nd, 2024, are the seeds for what's coming into fruition under this mid-April full pink moon, 23 degrees Libra. Shortly after the full pink moon in Libra peaks in the middle of April, Mars ingresses into fixed fire sign Leo for the second time this cycle, the first of which was way back in November 2024. Let's review Mars's recent retrogradation. On December 6th, 2024, Mars stationed retrograde 6 degrees Leo. Mars then retraced his steps, retrograding from the early degrees of Leo all the way back to 17 degrees Cancer, re-entering Cancer on July 6th, 2025, coinciding with the Los Angeles fires. With thousands of homes, a Cancer domain, homes of some of the most elite members of society and Hollywood, a Leo domain, destroyed by fire. Mars then stationed direct 17 degrees Cancer on February 24th, 2025, within conjunction territory to fixed star Wasat, which is all about fire, poison, gas, and chemicals. Mars was conjoined Wasat until the mid-March full total lunar eclipse in Virgo, meaning that Mars has spent a prolonged time in the emotional cardinal water sign, Cancer, the sign of the moon, Mars' sign of weakness. Mars retrograde along the Cancer-Leo cusp, the two signs that are ruled by our luminaries, the moon ruling Cancer and the sun ruling Leo, relate back to themes of personal identity, as does the exalted sun in Aries, conjunct Chiron, where Leo is about creative self-expression and heart-centered parenting or leadership coming from an open fourth heart chakra. Cancer relates to our identities within the home and other protected spaces, including our own energetic boundaries, which we use to protect ourselves. Mars is considered to be weakened or debilitated, not happy, in the moon sign. And this is because, elementally speaking, fire and water do not mix well. Mars is the fiery planet of war, action, and aggression, while Cancer is about healthy emotional expression and regulation. Fire and water, as we said, do not mix well together, as they combine to produce steam, which can be powerful, explosive, and damaging. When Mars is in Cancer, we're easily triggered and more likely to emotionally react. These reactions can be driven by resentment, irritation, and frustration. Pent-up emotions, like steam on the pot of water boiling with a lid, come exploding out of us. These emotions can erupt at home, in the workplace, or in other bounded spaces. Politically speaking, I don't think we've seen the United States, this country, so divided since the last time that Neptune ingressed Aries, 1861 to 1875. While the right seeks to decrease national debt, to eliminate unnecessary spending, and to decentralize the powers of government, the left wants more centralized government. And this is to protect and preserve our natural rights, especially the rights of minorities, with programs like DEI, and organizations like FEMA and the woke movement, with many on the right feeling as though our homes and homeland are under perceived threat from essentially unregulated immigration. The left blames the right for increasing or creating hatred and division. The left believes that Trump and Elon are destroying critical institutions of the American people, while the right believes that they are reducing and eliminating unnecessary, superfluous spending and fraud. This discord or dichotomy is what Jupiter in Gemini and its long-term square to Saturn in Pisces has been all about, and we've seen this play out on social media. Remember who owns or funds and controls each social media platform, and be discerning with the information that you take in. With the South Node in Virgo until mid-July 2026, collectively we will all be challenged to discern between what is real and what is illusionary in an era of information overload. When Mars re-enters fixed fire sign Leo in mid-April, themes of fire will become even more exaggerated, as will themes of karma to Hollywood and to members of the most elite sections of society, the wealthy top 2%, influencers, celebrities, royalty, leaders, especially those who misuse or abuse their power, status, and influence. Like Sean P. Diddy Combs, please don't come after me. I am just the messenger. If I mysteriously pass away at the ripe young age of 34 from pneumonia, you will know what happened to me. With Mars back in Leo, gaining speed, and with Neptune in Aries with Saturn close by on the heels of the eclipse, there may be a major violent event that kickstarts the year of chaos. On April 19th, 2025, Taurus season begins with the sun ingressing into the sign of the Bull. Taurus is a Venus-ruled fixed earth sign. Taurus, fixed earth sign of the Bull, is about establishing consistent rhythms in life. This means balancing work, play, and rest. We plant the seeds, sow our crops, and ultimately harvest the rewards of our hard work. Taurus works only as hard as is necessary, and it's a sign that is all about enjoying the physical manifestations of our work, the natural world, beauty, art, pleasures, and the luxuries of life, working only as hard as needed to indulge in all their splendor. I'll review the important transits and ingresses. April began with the sun in Aries, answering to Mars in Cancer until April 17th, then in mutual reception with Mars in Leo, in cahoots and partnership, until April 19th, when the sun ingresses into Venus-ruled fixed earth sign Taurus. On April 4th, Saturn in Pisces formed an exact sextile to Uranus in Taurus on fixed demon star Algol. On April 7th, Mars came back into bounds, Mercury stationed direct, and Venus retrograde conjoined Saturn, coming out of a very karmic weekend. Venus and Saturn usually conjoin only once annually, but due to Venus's retrograde, they conjoined multiple times and for several days. Venus last conjoined Saturn on January 19th and 20th, 16 degrees Pisces, prior to stationing retrograde. Venus conjoined Saturn 3 times this year due to her retrograde, so April 7th features the second pass, with the third pass coming up on April 24th, once Venus is direct. Saturn conjoined with Venus can bring feelings of loneliness. Saturn brings a long-term, mature, and responsible component to whatever changes are unfolding within your relationships, your values, the work that you do to earn money, etc. This will become increasingly clear as we approach the second half of April and enter Taurus season, with the sun answering to a newly reborn Venus after retrograde. On April 16th, Mercury returned to 0 degrees of Aries, answering to Mars, conjoining Neptune, 0 degrees Aries. 0 degrees of the cardinal signs brings some sort of major news or revelation to the collective, especially with Mercury in conjunction to Neptune. There will be some sort of return to the end of March, when Mercury and Neptune conjoined 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, a newly reborn Mercury, direct, brings clarity to what the future of Neptune in Aries until 2038 will bring. This can include changes with the workforce, with jobs, and revelations around unhealthy habits, especially as they relate to our daily routines and schedules. On April 16th, 17th, depending on where you're tuning in from, Mars returns to 0 degrees Leo, putting Mars and Leo in mutual reception with an exalted sun in Aries in the final days of Aries season. But remember that Mars is still post-retrograde shadow until May. On April 19th, the sun ingresses into Venus-ruled fixed earth sign Taurus, kicking off Taurus season 2025. And almost immediately, on April 20th, 2025, the sun in Taurus forms an exact square to Mars in Leo. And this is while Mars is loosely opposing Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius. Almost immediately, the sun in Taurus forms an exact square to Mars in Leo, while Mars is opposing in this long-term opposition to Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius. This means that the tension building with Mars opposite Pluto squares off against our spotlight of energy in the early degrees of Taurus, which we'll feel in the second half of April, on or around April 18th to April 30th, 2025. Be aware of your surroundings. If you consider Black Moon Lilith 2 degrees Scorpio, you can consider this a fixed square formation. On April 23rd, 2025, this fixed square exacts with Pluto 3 degrees Aquarius, directly opposite Mars 3 degrees Leo, forming an exact square to the Sun 3 degrees Taurus, opposite Black Moon Lilith 3 degrees Scorpio. Taurus-ruled areas, the work that we do to earn money, our finances, will be forced to adapt to the future, Pluto in Aquarius. There may be a DEATH, or assassination attempt, of a major solar figure or leader. On April 24th, 2025, we have the third and final conjunction between Saturn and Venus, with Venus now direct, this time 27 degrees Pisces. As the third and final pass, it will be a return to January 19th and 20th, and to April 7th. There may be some sort of official recession or banking crisis or corresponding housing market crisis, especially in the wake of extreme weather and the impacts that has on personal lines of insurance. There could be an insurance and housing market crisis, if not a total collapse. And major clarity will come through around Venus-ruled areas. Relationships, friendships, aesthetics, peace and stability, finances, the work that we do, how we invest our time, money, and energy. April 26th, 2025, we still have this fixed square featuring Mars, 3 degrees Leo, opposite Pluto, 3 degrees Aquarius, squaring off against the Sun, now 6 degrees Taurus, opposite Black Moon Lilith, 3 degrees Scorpio. This is a return to the energy we saw in late October, early November, in the days leading up to and including the United States presidential election. Figuratively or literally, some major change unfolds to leadership as we know it. Karma is delivered to anyone in the top 2%, influencers, celebrities, Hollywood, leaders, royalty, especially those who misuse or abuse their power, status, and influence. We'll see more wildfire, and we may see a national attack. We had the reverse of this in the late 1940s during World War II, with Mars in Aquarius opposing Pluto in Leo. Pluto in Leo bringing the generation known as the baby boomers, who are, quite sadly, beginning to end their time here on planet Earth. Coinciding with the final Mars-Pluto opposition, we end the month with a Venus-ruled new moon, 7 degrees Taurus, on April 27th, 2025, featuring an exalted moon in fixed Earth sign Taurus. There will be some sort of seeding energy in the area where you have Taurus, with the new moon activating by direct conjunction that fixed square, featuring Mars in the early degrees of Leo, opposing Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius, squaring off against the new moon in the early degrees, the first decan of Venus-ruled Taurus, opposing Black Moon Lilith in the early degrees of Scorpio. And finally, on April 30th, 2025, Venus returns to 0 degrees Aries, one of her signs of weakened expression, where she will be answering to Mars in fellow fixed fire sign, Leo. Venus will be in her post-retrograde shadow until May 16th, 2025, the moment she reaches 10 and a half degrees of Aries.
Thank you for watching. If you're still with me, you're a real one. Drop your current most used emoji in the comments. If you took anything away from this video, we ask that you like, comment, share the content, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, we know that you'll enjoy the full playlist and this additional video. Thank you so much, love you, and see you soon.